Hey there. So, it's probably late. Maybe you're cramming for an exam, or you're just one of those curious people. Either way, I'm glad you're here. Look, this whole topic, biodiversity, it can feel huge, right? Kind of overwhelming. So, for the next few minutes, let's just forget all that pressure. We're just going to break it down, nice and easy, piece by piece.
All right, to really get this, I want you to start with a simple idea. What if our whole planet, all of its ecosystems, all the living things, what if it was all just one big airplane? And we're all just passengers on this flight. Just keep that image in your head, okay? Because it's going to make everything else we talk about just click.
So first things first, what even is biodiversity? I mean, we hear this word thrown around all the time, right? And it sounds super scientific, like something you'd need a textbook to figure out. But honestly, it's a really simple idea when you get down to it. Let's peel back those layers.
Okay, so at its very core, biodiversity is just the variety of life. All of it. From the absolute tiniest genes you can't even see, all the way up to these huge, sprawling ecosystems like rainforests and oceans. A sociobiologist named Edward Wilson really made this term famous, and his whole point was to capture everything, the full spectrum. It's literally the sum total of all the living things on our planet.
Now, to make this big idea a little easier to handle, we can break it down into 3 levels. And trust me, it's super intuitive. Think about it like this. First, you have genetic diversity. That's kind of like the variety within your own family. I mean, you and your siblings aren't identical copies, right? Then there's species diversity. That's like all the different families living in your neighborhood. And finally, you've got ecological diversity. That's like all the different neighborhoods, the deserts, the rainforests, the coral reefs that make up the whole city, or the whole planet in this case. See? It's just variety, but on every single level. And this really puts that variety into perspective. I mean, when you think of animals, what comes to mind? Probably lions or whales or maybe birds, right? But look at this chart. That massive slice of the pie, over 70%, that's insects. Think about that for a second. Out of every 10 animal species on this planet, more than 7 of them are insects. That is just wild. Kind of changes how you picture the animal kingdom, doesn't it?
All right, so we've established there's a ton of different life out there. The big question is, so what? Why does it even matter if we lose some of it? Well, this is where we need to go back to our airplane. Because biodiversity isn't just, nice to look at. It's the actual engineering that keeps our plane in the sky. You could even call it our planet's insurance policy. And that brings us to this really clever idea from an ecologist named Paul Ehrlich. He called it the rivet-popper hypothesis. And here's how it goes. He said, imagine that airplane is held together by thousands of tiny rivets, and each species is one of those rivets. Now, if one passenger gets bored and pops a rivet out of their seat to take home, well, the plane's probably not going to crash. But what happens if every passenger starts popping rivets? One from the window, one from the floor. Pretty soon, the plane gets weaker and weaker. And eventually, you might just pop the one critical rivet that's holding the wing on. The scary part? You won't know which one is the critical one until it's way too late.
So what are these rivets actually doing for us? Well, they give us stuff we use every single day, and we barely even notice. I mean, the oxygen we're breathing right now, the Amazon alone pumps out about 20% of it. The food on our plates, the materials for our clothes, and get this, over 25% of the drugs you'd find at a pharmacy come from plants. 25,000 different plant species are used in traditional medicine around the world. These are real, tangible things our ecosystem just gives us, for free.
But here's the most important part, and it's easy to miss. Beyond all the stuff we can list, oxygen, food, medicine, the biggest thing biodiversity gives us is just stability, the system itself. Think about it. A plane with more rivets is stronger. It's more resilient. It can handle some turbulence without falling apart. It's the overall strength of the airplane that we're relying on, and that strength comes directly from how complex it is.
Okay, so this brings us to the tough part of the story. If this whole system is so important, what's going wrong? What's weakening our airplane? Well, ecologists have pinpointed 4 main threats, and they gave them a pretty dramatic name. They call it the Evil Quartet.
And this isn't just some random list of bad things. These 4 are considered the main reasons species are going extinct around the world. They're the 4 big ways our plane is being, well, sabotaged. So let's take a look at each one.
Number 1, and this is the big one by far, is habitat loss and fragmentation. In our airplane analogy, this isn't just popping out a rivet. This is like taking a saw and literally cutting off a piece of the wing. Think about when the Amazon rainforest is cleared for something like soybean farming. We're not just cutting down trees. We are completely wiping out the home for millions of species. It's just gone.
The second one is overexploitation. This is pretty straightforward. It's when our human need turns into greed. We just take too much, too fast. We've seen it happen over and over. The stellar sea cow, the passenger pigeon, these were species that were driven to extinction because we just couldn't stop. It's like we're pulling rivets out of the plane way faster than the maintenance crew could ever hope to replace them.
Third on the list is alien species invasions. Think of this like someone installing a faulty rivet. It's made of the wrong metal, and it starts to corrode and damage all the other rivets around it. A really famous and tragic example of this is the Nile perch in Africa's Lake Victoria. Humans introduced this big, predatory fish, and it just wrecked the place. It caused the extinction of more than 200 native species of cichlid fish. Just goes to show how one bad part can mess up the whole machine.
And the fourth one is something called co-extinctions. This is basically a chain reaction. When one species disappears, other species that depend on it, they disappear too. It's like when you pull out one rivet and another one that was attached to it just falls out right after. So imagine a specific fish goes extinct. Well, all the parasites that lived only on that fish, they go extinct too. It's a domino effect.
Okay, I know that last part was pretty heavy. The evil quartet sounds pretty bad, but it is absolutely not the end of the story. The good news is, because we know what the problems are, we can actually work on solutions. And there is a global rescue plan. So let's talk about the more hopeful side of things.
So, the strategies to protect life basically fall into two big categories. The first is called in situ conservation. In situ just means on-site. So, this is about protecting a species right where it lives, in its natural home. Think national parks, wildlife sanctuaries. The second is ex situ, which means off-site. This is when we have to take a species out of its home because it's just too dangerous there, and we protect it somewhere else, like in a zoo or a botanical garden. Protecting the home is always the best plan, but having that safe house option is absolutely critical when a species is on the brink.
And one of the smartest in situ strategies is to focus on something called biodiversity hotspots. Now, what are those? They're basically these relatively small areas on the planet that are just packed with a ton of different species, especially endemic species. That means species you can't find anywhere else in the world. And here's the genius part. All these hotspots together cover less than 2% of the Earth's land area. But if we can protect just those areas, we can protect a huge percentage of the world's species. It's all about maximum bang for your buck.
And this isn't just a few scientists hoping people will listen. This has become a massive global effort. It really kicked into high gear back in 1992 at the Earth Summit in Rio. That's where nations from all over the world agreed that this was a shared responsibility. Then, 10 years later, at another summit, 190 countries actually pledged to reduce the rate we're losing all this biodiversity. So the world really is paying attention.
So let's just bring it all back home, back to our airplane. At the end of the day, biodiversity isn't really about memorizing a list of species for a test. It's about appreciating the incredibly complex, interconnected system that keeps our world working. It's the engineering of our planet. Every single species is one of those rivets, playing its part to keep the whole thing stable and strong. So maybe the next time you're outside, just listen for a second. That sound? The quiet hum of everything going on around you? That's not just background noise. That's the sound of the system working perfectly.